Ruler School is brought to you by Happy Little Hug Factory and these amazing patrons. Thank you for your support. Enjoy the video. Hey there, Rulers. Welcome back to Ruler School. This is DMO73 bringing you the deck profile for Paul Klut's New Age Fuji list. Finally getting to take some time to look at what Fuji has to offer because of some of the cards that came out of this previous set. Strangers of New Valhalla, specifically that Master Rune, giving him ability to kind of control the board and keep the pace where he kind of wants it. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Obviously, Fuji on the front flips over to give us a dragon on the backside. This deck doesn't run any dragons in the main, as you're going to see, because we're really never going to flip Fuji. We really just want to be able to use Fuji for Three Kingdoms Partition Plan and for being able to use his other Master Rune Flame Soldier formation. So we're never really going to worry about flipping him, especially with this list. It is definitely more of an aggressive beatdown list, so that just kind of gives you some insight there. So stone deck wise, we play 4 Dragon Ore because we do want the strength counters to complement with Piggy. We also play 4 Magic Stones of the Hermit. This would be more for like sideboard stuff if we did have dragons that we could pull in from the sideboard, so that we could get them swiftness and then swing stuff down. And then 2 Fire Magic Stones to round out the stone deck. Going into the Rune deck real quick, we have Flame Soldier formation, that Master Rune that essentially prevents it so that a stuff can't block or lets us at instant speed suddenly grab whatever we need out of the deck. A Sand Awakening because it's only 1 will, it's instant speed, and it can buff up every one of our creatures a massive amount. 4+4+8 helps you win trades, helps you sneak in that last little bit of damage, all kinds of stuff. Explosion is what it is. It helps really answer blockers or attackers in the early game to make sure you're pushing that damage. Soldier Ambush in the same way. It's instant speed. It gets it so that if you're going to sneak through damage, I mean, all your Resonators gain +4/+4. So it's a pretty big buff across the board for only 2 red will. And then lastly, the newest edition, Sandora's Invasion, only costs 4. This is a huge card. It lets you look at the top 5, grab a 1 cost, 2 cost, and 3 cost. And since pretty much this whole deck is 1 cost, 2 cost, 3 cost, you're most of the time going to get 3 creatures off of this. And when you're running things like Piggy to be able to give stuff swiftness, things like Howell Pig Squadron that naturally get swiftness, or even Shengang Bao who can get swiftness off of things, you can suddenly have Sandora's Invasion blast off for a ton of damage that your opponent isn't expecting, all for 4 will. So going into the main deck real quick, Sandworm, swiftness creature, very early aggression, can't be attacked, so it's pretty safe to play on turn 1. Black Spot Tiger to have that flying aggression, as well as complements really nicely with Shengang Bao. You notice that we're looking for beasts a lot too. Howell Pig to be able to do some recovery. It's mainly just so that this is something that gets brought into the field after a kill of a Howell Pig Squadron. It's mainly why we're playing it, because again, we're not really worrying about flipping Fuji as much as any other deck might want to try to do. Then we have Piggy, obviously, super strong 2-drop, generates those strength counters. With more strength counters, you can give stuff swiftness and flying, so you can manipulate kind of where your damage is coming from and keep a constant pressure down on your opponent. Tiger of Kunlun, because as the game goes on, suddenly, red doesn't have a lot of draw power. You'll see this deck has basically no draw power. So if you see 1 Tiger of Kunlun, and you have a lot of will left over, you can suddenly put a bunch of bodies on board for very, very cheap without having to worry about drawing them. For Shengang Bao, because we can awaken him and help us get into those beasts, as well as have that aggression with swiftness, and also makes it so that the Heaven Thundering Strikes that we do have only cost us 1, which is nice. 3 Pang Tong as a form of being able to provide some kind of consistency. Every card in the deck is red, and he just grabs any red card, so you can get a lot of that way. He doesn't put a lot of aggression on board, but having that 8 defense is nothing to shake a stick at. Couple Zhuge Liangs to round out the kind of high-end creature cost. You get to search for Pang Tong when she comes into the field. You can get to those 4 runes, and you can even suddenly cast Pang Tong for free. Suddenly you can start banishing banishing Resonators to get chance canceled, all kinds of stuff. So she's kind of a high-end kind of, I would say, a little bit more of a win more button for this deck, but we did want to at least make use of her, and considering the fact that a lot of this deck uses its runes for instant speed stuff, you can get to rune 4 pretty easily. For Howell Pig Squadron, again, just for that pure aggression, and if they try to kill it as opposed to killing your Piggy, if you had that Piggy, suddenly you're sitting on 4 Howell Pigs, all with swiftness, that puts even a lot more damage onto your opponent, excuse me. Going into the spells, it's pretty light, just a couple Heaven Thundering Strikes. And then we have Three Kingdoms Partition Plan. That new Master Rune only costs 2 red. Really lets you control your opponent's board state there. Can get them down to only having 1 creature. And then suddenly if you have like 6 creatures, you force them to only have 1, and then you swing through for a ton of damage. You kind of pincered them into being exactly where you want it to be. And then the card that is great when it's great and really bad when it's not great is Land of Fire Ambition Kunlun. 3 red will is a lot to commit, but if you can stick this in the early game, like Energize turn 2 this, and your opponent doesn't have addition removal, suddenly you're looking at Sandworms that are 1-drop 6/7s, Black Spot Tigers, which are flying 7/7s for 1, Howell Pigs are 7/6s. Like, everything just gets progressively bigger, and suddenly it's almost too much damage for your opponent to handle, especially when you again consider the fact that you have something that will literally make it so they can't block your stuff. So ultimately, like I said, this deck is very aggressive. It's very rush down. It's designed to kind of use the new tools that were given to Fushi in a new way to be able to allow him to better put that pressure onto your opponent longer into the later game, rather than kind of stumbling and getting to a point where they just can't get damage through because your opponent's been able to kind of match you turn for turn. There's a lot more options this deck has, specifically with Three Kingdoms, that allows you to keep that tidal wave of pressure coming. So thank you so much to Paul for sending the deck list, for being willing to sit down with the channel and play it. It's really fun to see Fushi get utilized, and it was fun to play against. Hope you guys enjoyed the list. Let me know what you guys think, or a different take on Fushi that you might have, in the comment section down below. And until next time, this is TMO73 saying class dismissed.